Okay, what do we have this time? Have our hero hanging out with some assorted types, and there's some definite sizing up going on. By the way, we're in Chapter 8, Wings to the Birds, Fangs to the Beast. Back to our scene, things predictably escalate, and Ito gets tested instead of just sized up. And this baddie here throws a saucer at him, but no, that's not the unusual weapon. Because it's not really a weapon, even though it's being thrown to hit somebody in the head. But Ito, of course, deftly avoids getting hit in the head. The point of those two panels is to show us that baddie likes throwing things and is good at it. You can see that the accuracy is good because Ito would have gotten hit in the head if he hadn't moved out of the way. But we're not here to talk about dishware being thrown. Matic getting shown up by Ito's easy dodge, he sends his actual fighting implement at him next, and that's what we're here to talk about today, Shuriken. This time he misses on purpose. He wanted to test Ito's nerves. Ito doesn't even flinch, of course. So now let's talk shurikens and Shurikenjutsu. The latter being the name of the martial art dedicated to this kind of thing, and yes, of course there's a whole martial art dedicated to this kind of thing, because it's Japan. Shurikenjutsu, by the way, translates as hand-release blade techniques. And this book here was a handy source for this video. And you can see just on its cover an indication of the variety of throwing implements there were. And just with the spike-like variety, check out this next picture. A panoply of choices just within this one weapon type within the overall martial art. These are the kuji, or nails. And when it comes to these and the martial art in general, in that most Japanese of ways, it is still, of course, practiced. So no, this kind of thing wasn't reserved for just ninjas. This was a samurai martial art. And look at the distance here. Pretty impressive. You don't get good enough to reliably hit from this distance with something that spins end over end without a lot of practice. And I think all of this speaks to a very real martial tradition. Like people, yes, they actually did this and used these in fights. You have a very wide variety in the arsenal. Ruhas that still preserve the techniques, and they're complex, right? It's not just this, okay, we have this one kind of spike or disc and we throw it like this, one way. No, there's like, just in one video I saw those 3 different delivery motions, like throwing motions, and separate handholds as well. There's also the preservation of very practical fighting techniques, as we'll see in a minute. Anyway, on this picture, pay attention to the item that is second from the right. It seems to me, the exact kind that's being depicted in Lone Wolf and Cub. Our villain was unhappy at Ito dodging, effortlessly dodging the bull. Now he's even less happy with him being so masterful that he knew he didn't have to dodge the shuriken throw, which, was meant to really freak him out. So he unleashes a barrage this time. And no surprise, that does not rattle our hero at all. In this video series, we always talk about the fantasy versus reality ratio. Is the weapon a historical one? If it is it perfectly accurate, semi-accurate, barely accurate, etc.? And then the same question applies to how it's actually used in the manga. So here we have a definite 100% historical implement. The fantasy quotient comes in with the use. Like, if you watch videos of masters, people who dedicate their lives to Kobudo doing this, no, they can't whip a bunch of these out of their sleeve and rapid fire them and have them all stick point first in the flash of an eye. Absolutely not. And even if they were holding all of the shuriken in their offhand, ready to grab and throw at a time, that's still not going to happen. As opposed to this kind of shuriken, bow shuriken, I believe they're called, shokken, the so-called ninja stars, those are different. I have seen where you take a stack of those, hold them in one hand, and it's like sending playing cards out, a dealer, one at a time off the top of the deck quickly. You can do that, and that actually looks pretty cool. They don't have a ton of power, and I'm sure the accuracy can't be great, but you could see where that might overwhelm somebody as a distraction. And that's the main use for this kind of a thing. You're distracting your opponent. You can't completely ignore the fact that you're sending a sharp piece of metal flying at him, even though the odds of it doing serious damage, much less lethal damage, are, very, very low. But again, you can't ignore it. You get hit really anywhere in the head, throat, groin, shins. Of course, we're talking unarmored here. And maybe the kneecap, you could be in trouble. And that is going to give the thrower a chance to run, or, a little bit more surprisingly, relative to how we see these things portrayed in movies and whatnot, attack. As demonstrated here. Notice the practitioner, he's only holding the katana in one hand and presumably his offhand, his left hand. Well, why would you do that if you were facing an enemy? Because you're pulling out your shuriken. And maybe you do that when he's not looking or before the fight, because now you can take this stance here and you just look like you're ready to sword fight. But surprise, the first attack is actually throwing the hidden hand weapon. And while you've got to contend with that damn thing, the thrower has the chance to run up and deliver a cut or a thrust. So this is what I was talking about earlier in the video when I talked about, very practical techniques preserved in the tradition. That makes sense. That's very real world. And speaking of all this, some of you might know that katanas often had a small knife attached on the scabbard. That little knife, and it really is little, is generally called a kozuka. Even though, as far as I could tell, that term really specifically applies to the handle of said small knife, which is properly called a kogatana. The point is, there was often that small knife there, and the lore states one of the uses for that knife, is a utility knife. You could take it out to do all kinds of little small tasks, but guess what? You could, of course, also throw it as a shuriken. And so was that how this entire tradition started? Like then a whole art with a whole lot of variations on the theme grew out of that? Maybe, but it seems the leading theory is different. It's that on the battlefield, you might have to pick up something and throw it at your enemy. And there's going to be a lot of options. Let's say you're now weaponless. Your side is losing and you need to make your escape. Well, you pick up the broken head off a naginata or a yari. Or maybe you at least still have your dagger on you, or someone's is lying right there on the ground. Or even a sword. Or even broken sword. Regardless, step 1, pick it up, whatever it is. Step 2, throw it at your enemies. Step 3, run. Strangely enough, I didn't see the offensive version postulated here, like when it comes to the battlefield, but that could happen too. That seems, potentially practical. The battle has really degenerated now, and it's down to the one-on-one. I see my opponent, there's something lying at my feet, grab it, throw it at him, rush in. Try to take advantage of the distraction. So that could be it, but then you also had people just throwing their swords. Remember, a samurai would normally have 2 swords on him, so the wakizashi could and was thrown at opponents. You see that being shown here, but the history states this was not uncommon. And let's say you're a samurai in the Edo period, so the battles are not happening out on the battlefield, but in civilian circles. You have beef with another samurai, you bump into each other, each one refuses to apologize, and now you're about to go at it on the street or in an alley or whatever. Well, you could seamlessly whip out your wakizashi, send it flying at him, for all of the reasons we've discussed earlier. Anyway, back to the manga. Our villain, who is a sadistic jerk and likes to threaten people with his shuriken and throw them at people, finally gets a taste of his own medicine. Not with his preferred tool, but with a thrown weapon, and you can guess who did the throwing. So that's it for this installment. Thanks for watching.